uncertainty growing over US President Trump's push for peace between Ukraine and Russia. Moscow's latest statement suggesting Russia is stepping back from accepting any Western security guarantees, something that appeared to be agreeable when Trump and Putin met in Alaska. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, along with European leaders, met Trump in Washington this week. The Europeans and Trump talked about security guarantees for Kyiv, which would involve sending troops into a post-war Ukraine. The US has ruled out sending any American soldiers, but there's talk of aerial support. But now Russia, though, says any foreign troops in Ukraine would be unacceptable. Meanwhile, President Zelensky said there was no sign that Moscow wanted any sort of talks after Russia carried out one of its biggest strikes on Ukraine Thursday. Russia's foreign minister has said no meeting between Putin and Zelensky will happen until an agenda is agreed upon. Let's take a closer look at this story now. We're joined by former US Ambassador to Ukraine, William Tylor. Thank you very much, Ambassador Tylor, for your time here. Ambassador Tylor, it's been really a dizzying 7 days. First, the Alaska summit with Putin, then the Europeans meeting with Trump. But looks like things have stalled again because Moscow's massive attack on Ukraine on Thursday. Now, Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov saying no meeting until an agenda is agreed upon. Where are we at? Back to square one?
Well, Allister, first of all, no surprises there coming out of Moscow. All the things you just said. I mean, the continued bombardment, brutal, cruel, barbaric bombardment of Ukraine continues at incredible levels. And you continue to see what we have seen over and over and over from Russia stall. It is very clear that the Russians do not want to end this war. It is very clear they don't want a ceasefire. It's very clear they don't want to end the war with an agreement. It's very clear they don't want to sit down to talk with President Zelensky. It's not even clear they want to sit down and talk with President Trump. They want to stall because the Russians think that they can continue to bombard the Ukrainians until they give up. And that's futile, Allister. That is futile. The Ukrainians will not give up. Europeans, you referenced them, they're not giving up. The Americans have a recommitment. I'm very pleased that President Trump on Monday, not last Friday, but on Monday was very positive, constructive. He talked about security guarantees that the Americans would participate in. He talked about, he listened to the Ukrainians and the other Europeans when they talked about ceasefire, which he had essentially given up on in Anchorage. Even though going into Anchorage, he had been full bore, guns ablazing for a ceasefire. When he sat down with President Putin, something changed. But the Europeans and including the Ukrainians may have gotten him back on track on Monday on a ceasefire. So while I agree that the Anchorage discussion was disheartening, and I agree that there's no change in the Russian attitude, continuing to bomb and continue to stall. There seems to be some positive movement on the Ukrainian, European, American side on security guarantees. And one last thing, Allister, let me just say, it doesn't matter a bit what Lavrov says about security guarantees. Yeah, of course they're not going to agree. The whole point of a security guarantee is to deter the Russians from attacking again. Of course, they're not going to agree. Why would we even ask if they want to agree? Right. We shouldn't even ask that question. No, the security guarantee is moving forward and there's planning going on, and that's the right thing.
Right, Ambassador Tylor, the EU's chief diplomat has said that Ukraine should not give up territory. It's a trap. Putin has said that the fight would stop if Ukraine gives up what it controls of the Donbass region. That's a climb down from Putin's earlier demands of wanting 4 regions. Would ceding the Donbass really ensure peace, though?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is ludicrous for Putin to ask the Ukrainians to give up territory that the Ukrainians have been defending successfully since 2014. Since 2014, the Ukrainians have been defending that area, that exact area that Putin wants the Ukrainians just to give up, just voluntarily hand it over. That is strategic area. That's strategic heights. That's a well-defended, well-prepared, defensively prepared area that has kept the Russians at bay for, well, I keep track, just on this one, 1,276 days, but really going back to 2014. The Russians have tried to take that, and the Ukrainians have been defending it courageously and effectively, and they're not going to give it up. And it's ludicrous for Putin to ask them to give it up. No, I think the Europeans are exactly right.
Ambassador Taylor, one way the U.S. can really arm twist Putin into peace is sanctions. We know of tariffs on Russian oil, on India, yet unfairly countries like China and Turkey are untouched. What's going to really make Putin bend? Because a red carpet welcome in Alaska seems to have really gone nowhere.
I'm glad it went nowhere, actually. But you're right. Sanctions matter. My view is, Allister, that when President Trump put those secondary tariffs on India, on exports of Indian goods to the United States, because India buys so much Russian oil, when that happened, I know it's painful. We can come back and talk about that. And you make the point that it's inconsistent because he didn't do it on other nations. All true. But when Trump did that, Putin spooked. Putin panicked. Putin got very worried that maybe President Trump is serious about putting tariffs on people who buy my oil. And if people like India, like China, the two biggest purchasers of Russian oil, if they don't buy my oil, Putin said to himself, I'm in trouble. I'm in deep trouble. I can't fund my war with Ukraine. I'm in trouble. So, he said, I need to get together with Trump. I need to try to convince him that I'm really a partner for peace, and I'm really willing to have a conversation about ending this war. Because not he was interested in peace or ending the war, no, because he wanted to avoid the secondary tariffs that Trump already showed he's willing to do by putting them on India. So Putin got what he wanted. He got his meeting, got his picture taken. But more importantly to him, he diverted, he delayed further secondary tariffs or other sanctions. I mean, there are other sanctions that Trump has in his pocket that could do the same kind of damage to the Russian economy, in particular oil revenues, that he hasn't done yet, that Trump hasn't put on yet. But he can do that, and Putin knows that.
Right. William Taylor, thank you so much for your time here on Washington Watch.